just a few moments.
Three of the town board. We got various fire folks, but only two board members, I think.
Mayor, you've got 4 town board members on right now. I believe Trustee Lancaster was not going to make this meeting, and so that would mean Trustee Senek is not joined yet.
Yeah, I didn't click the extra arrow there, so I see now.
Lenny, I just got an email from Dan Wester that said he's having a hard time joining, and make sure he got the updated link.
We'll ask staff to get in touch with him. Thanks, John.
Steve, I think you got a demotion. You may want to change. There you go.
I did, Travis. Thank you for sending the link, though.
Hey, Steve, once and for all, I keep having people debate on your name. I'm 2 years into my position, and for a while, somebody had told me that you pronounce it just as Caressia, with just an S sound. Before that, I had been pronouncing it Steve Careccia, or Carescia, like more of an SH. Say it officially.
You were more correct, Mayor. It's Careccia.
Yeah, so it does have the CH sound.
Yes.
That's how I did it from the very beginning, and I kept getting directed in bad directions. So you will now forever be Careccia again.
You've got
Would
it.
someone mind sending me or texting me the link? I have a button that says join the meeting, but it doesn't email well. I'm trying to get Hippie the link, and he's out of town and having trouble.
If you send an email to townclerk@estes.org, staff can work on that.
All right, let me.
I'll
Sandra,
send
give us the
it
email
right
address.
to Sandy.
I'll copy him on it.
Yeah, we all have a different join the webinar link, so I don't think if you sent to Mirrors it would work.
Can I just send it to town clerk?
Yes, ma'am. Please send an email to townclerk@estes.org, and we'll work on sending a link.
Okay, I'm gonna copy Hippie on it so that you know you can just hit reply all, and that will help.
Speaking of spelling and pronunciation, is there a historic reason why he spells it with a Y rather than an IE, hippie? Just curious. These old English majors are hard to satisfy, you know.
Mayor, town staff are working on getting the chief building official, John Wester, joining, as well as the other person mentioned, and we wanted to let you know we're working on that.
Hey, Travis.
Yes, Mayor.
Did you happen to see in the public forum the other day that note from some lady who was concerned about the parking structure being all cluttered and dirty and filthy and everything? Did you see that?
Yep, we sent a staff member over there. There was some trash. I wouldn't have characterized it maybe the exact same way, but we got it cleaned up and are looking at where that trash is coming from in a little bit more closely.
Yeah, I drove through there yesterday. Must have been after they went through or something, because I really didn't see anything, and I haven't replied to her yet. You know, there's a lot of stuff that blows in the corners, just leaf and, you know, debris and stuff. You'll get little piles of sticks and leaves and things. And then, of course, gosh, a parking lot, you know, you get kind of on the walls, you get concrete stains and different kind of drippy looking things over the years and stuff. Looks like a parking lot to me predominantly. But if there were actual piles or chunks of garbage, that was gone by the time I got there. So thanks to whoever picked that up. See if there's anything else I can bug the town administrator about while I got him here.
I just want to check and make sure that you guys, someone got that email. I copied Hippie on it, but he hasn't seen an email from you yet.
Yes, ma'am. Staff just sent that email, and we're also making contact with Dan Wester.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bonnie Dan's on the call.
Good morning, everybody.
There you got Dan. Travis, did you see the announcement in The Voice yesterday that Quota is moving behind the HR Block building?
Yeah, Mayor, I have been in contact with Quota quite a bit recently. So
I know.
I'm aware of their new location, and we're
Yeah.
continuing to work with them on a variety of things.
Yeah, let me know if there's anything I should do. That unfortunately is one of several things that kind of moved in a new direction in a more erratic way than it probably had to happen. But there's a lot of it that comes off the hill up there like that.
Funny, it looks like Board Member Smith is in as an attendee. If you could promote him to panelist, I think we can get started.
Who's running this primarily? I mean, I can say, hey, it's in session, but Sandy, is that you or Travis, or who's kind of running the agenda?
It's a very good question. I do not know.
Oh, okay. Well,
I guess between the two of us, one of us
yeah,
is.
I'm a pretty good improvisational musician, so I'll start it.
Mayor, it looks like we were able to add everybody if you want to go ahead and start this meeting.
Okay, John, welcome. I think John and Dan got on, and so we're good to go. I think that the primary purpose of this session is talking about the wild wildfire resiliency code, there have been changes from the state level that have created requirements and methods, and obviously it affects not only the fire crews and how they plan and what they do, but certainly comes back to the town too, hence the presence of Safe Built and Dan and other folks in regard to that. But I would say it'd probably be best first if John Landcamer or Warren or someone from the fire side describe it from your perspective, what you see the future world being.
I can jump in there and take that, Mayor. Thanks for that introduction. This resiliency code, came about Senate Bill in 23, I believe, is when it was passed to form that Wildfire Resiliency Code Board. So I think the goal of this whole program is to start looking at structure hardening in addition to fuel reduction around homes. The science has shown that a lot of the structure fires that are started from a wildland fire are more from the embers than they are from direct flame contact. So this is a more holistic approach to hopefully, prevent structures from igniting in a wildland fire. So that's a very broad overview. I know there's some questions about how this ties into our program. I think it ties in really well. We've been primarily focused on fuel reduction around residences. We are going to start to reach out more around commercial structures as well. But I think looking at both sides, both what buildings are made of and the fuel around them is a great way to approach resiliency and resistance to fire. So that's kind of overview, and whenever you're ready, I can start the presentation.
Any other preparatory comments? Otherwise, we could do the video. Go for it.
All right, let me share my screen, see if we can get that going. All right, and you should see my presentation.
Yep.
Certainly, if you have questions, I will do my best and monitor if you raise your hand if you want to ask a question about anything. If you think of it, you don't want to forget, throw it in the chat, then we can go back to it as well. And to be quite honest, I'd much rather go into a burning building than present on Zoom, but bear with me as we get through this.
Just as a point
again,
of clarity, John, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but if there are any questions, we do not enable chat during these public webinars. If you send an email to town clerk, we will make sure we forward it to John.
Thank you, Bunny. Wasn't aware of that. So, like I said in the preface, this has been going on since 2023. We've been talking about it over a year and a half almost, and we're coming up on the deadline. So this is why we requested to get in front of both boards and talk through this new wildfire resiliency code. So this is really the primary group that's been working on this over the year and a half with the community development director and chief building official, as well as Stacy from my crew. So again, this new code applies to construction, mostly new construction, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Some for alteration and again, in designated areas of the wildland urban interface. I'm just going to throw in right here that Larimer County has adopted this code and it went into effect January 1st. They interpreted this code pretty much as anything in unincorporated Larimer County is wildland urban interface. So just think of that as we move through this conversation. So this addresses new and existing buildings, move structures, and there are appendices. And again, the whole point of this is to try to mitigate risk, try to reduce risk, and obviously as firefighter, we're concerned about life risk as well as structure risk. And again, this is intended to supplement local building and fire codes.
When it says existing buildings, but it says alterations, so it's not like every existing building has to be retrofit explicitly.
Correct. It's not retroactive. And that was a great segue into this next slide. Because what it's looking at is additions. If 500 square foot is a trigger, anything large, 500 square foot or larger would require that the exterior of the building be brought up to this code. And roof coverings, if you're going to replace more than 25% of that roof covering, again, that would need to be brought up to code. Same with exterior walls, that 25% is a threshold. And the maintenance of it is really, I mean, it's really hard to go back and check on maintenance. That's really up to the homeowner. And again, this is intended to help structures survive in a wildland fire environment. Things that are exempt are things that are less than what we just talked about, less than 500 square foot addition, less than 25% of re-siding an exterior wall, less than 25% of re-roofing a structure. So part of this code, you have to determine a code compliance agency. In our discussions, in our core group of discussions, we decided that this was best to come from the fire district. So that's why we are looking at adopting it as a fire code. So again, it talks about all the players and who we're going to use for compliance. We have a third party that does plan review right now. Fire Marshal Services, that's Joe Jaramello. Captain Sutherland is working on her plan review, and once she gets there, we will formally take that over in-house. And then community development will be the designated chief building official, which is Dan Wester. And we'll get into a little bit more talking about who's going to do what, and hopefully it'll make sense to you like it made sense to us in our group discussions. And that's where that cooperative agreement comes in, and that'll be one of the next steps is we need to talk about a cooperative agreement. So we're clear on who's doing what within both organizations, and we don't have overlap or do things twice. We want to make sure we are clear about who's doing what, so we can make sure and effectively and administer this program. There's provisions in there to be able to assess fees, which we typically would assess fees for plan review and inspections, as does the town. So in that cooperative agreement, we'll just have to work out a way that we both are satisfied there with our fee structure. One of the big items of discussion has been the mapping. And I want to spend some time on this. I think it's really important to really talk through this so everybody has a good understanding. Larimer County, I believe, adopted the state map. I don't think that they modified it at all. And the next slide, I'll show that state map and we can talk about it. They do allow local map development. I presented this to our board on October 27th. We talked about using the map out of our CWPP. And it was agreed upon and it was adopted by the fire district board on October 27th. And again, we're looking at it in a holistic approach, and it'll make more sense when we look at the maps. But we really feel like it's important to not have any low hazard area within our district. We feel like everywhere in our district is at least a moderate or high or extreme. So because we're going stricter than the state code, they don't have to approve it, but they have requested to document it. So we will work with them and make sure they're satisfied with our mapping that we have adopted. So again, we're saying that there's no low hazard area within our fire district. Here's a state map. So you see the orange and the red, that's some moderate and high. And then there's an area in the center that's blank. There is no color. And the way this state map was developed is looking at the forest. And that's how they come up with the fire intensity classifications that they were coming up with. And that's how they developed this map. So we all know that forest fires don't just stop at the boundary line and say, oh, there's no hazard over here, so we're not going to go any further. And again, the current science is showing that 90% of structures that start on fire during a wildland fire, that start is from embers, not from direct flame contact. And we all know how far embers can go. Nobody thought they could go over the Continental Divide, and they sure did with the East Troublesome fire. So we want to protect that downtown core. So that core is our most densely populated, our most densely built part of our community. Is my strong opinion that we need to protect that. That's our engine for our economy. And if we don't protect that, I think that we're putting our economy at risk. And that's where I'm coming from with using the CWPP map. So our CWPP map, moderate is as low as it goes. So this is broken out into project areas to kind of give you an idea, and that's how we look at it also for when we're trying to get projects going. So that center area in here would be considered moderate, and that's really because of the potential ember storm and building to building fire as well. Things are closer together. And again, this is not a retroactive code. This is talking about new construction, major alterations. So we're not going to go downtown and say everybody's got to harden your structure. But I think in the best interest of our community and our economy, we need to think about this. See, these kind of codes take a long time to see the benefit of, but they're an important step. Any questions so far on the mapping?
John, I have quite a few questions about the mapping.
Okay.
Are we holding our questions, or are we diving in as we go?
I think I'm fine with diving in.
Okay. If I am correct, and I have to apologize for not being involved in fire district board meetings, but the fire district board has already adopted this concept of mapping the whole valley as a single risk.
Correct. And we'll talk more about that when we get into specific of the codes. It's not really a single risk, but it's moderate and above, which in the new wildfire resiliency code, moderate and above gets treated the same. And we'll get into that when we talk about that section of the code with structure hardening.
Was that adoption based on any data that was scientific? Was it based on anything that supports it other than what is scary, that embers do go a long way and there is risk? But what we're seeing and what I'm hearing is the concern about the properties being dropped in insurance, properties being uninsurable. And if we are electing as a community to elevate that risk without a good foundation to support that, other than there was a terrible fire in Colorado a few years ago, unless we have something to really substantiate that, I'm feeling pushback, and I'm looking at a project. So I'm looking at to govern a downtown district with a wildfire code seems like a reach, and there's different standards. And if this has already been decided, then maybe I need to take a different approach and I'm too late to the party. But if we're going to adopt this as a town and we're going to enforce the fire district's code, I think we have to be aligned with what constituents are giving feedback through the accountability of trustees. That's where I feel the pressure. So that's where this is coming from.
Yeah, I understand your concern. This map was developed in our CWPP with, I would say, high scientific backing, and it looked at 4 different risk factors, and that's where they came up with these ratings. It wasn't just looking at wildland fire; it's looking at fire risk. So that's that potential suppression challenges. It's also looking at evacuation hazards, as well as home ignition zone hazards. So it's really a holistic approach, and I would say that the town board has already adopted this map. It's in the CWPP. I'm not presenting anything that's new. The town board also adopted that project, and it's signed off by everybody that was involved. And it was not that long ago. It was 2022. I know it was a different board, but I'm not presenting something new for the community.
But we are going to be tasked with enforcing the code, whereas it's a fire district code. And I believe that cooperative agreement that am I correct? We have not seen that yet?
Correct.
So that cooperative agreement will put the demand on the town financially and put the town's name on enforcing it. Okay, I'll reserve my other comments.
Okay, and I think maybe some of those concerns will be answered as we get a little further into this.
I think Attorney Kramer was ready to weigh in too.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Stan.
Thanks, Trustee Hazelton and Mayor.
I think we need to make a clarification. If I'm understanding correctly, then it's not just about a cooperative agreement. The town needs to ratify a code passed by the fire district if that code is going to be enforceable within town boundaries. Is that correct?
Yes, that is my interpretation as well. The cooperative agreement is really between us and the building division to know who's inspecting what, who's enforcing what part of it. That's in addition to ratifying the code. Any other questions? Thanks for catching that, Bunny. And again, I just throw this in there to remind us why we're talking about this. Every day on my way to work, coming down Highway 7, I can see the Cameron Peak burn scar. I can see, also see the Kruger Mountain fire out my back door. So there's constant reminders in our community of why we're talking about wildland fire risk for our community. So let's talk a little bit more about the code. And again, this applies to exterior and new buildings, or again, an addition of 500 foot or more. There are some exceptions, and there's some questions on this exception. We got a response from the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board. We asked for the storage shed requirement to be 200 feet instead of 150 feet. The code that came out from the state said 150 feet. Dan pointed out there's a discrepancy between the International Residential Code and the International Building Code. So we have a question out there. We allow people to build a shed without a permit if it's less than 200 square feet. So that would be hard to enforce if we're already letting them build that shed without a permit. We're not going to know about it anyway. So we'll work through that with the state. So that will be probably potentially a change before we go to final approval. And hopefully I can get that relatively quickly. And again, we're talking about major renovation or additions or new buildings. So reconstruction, again, there's the same numbers at 25% of the surface area of the exterior walls, 25% of the surface area of the exterior roof, and additions that are 500 square feet or more, or less. I'm sorry, this is exceptions. I should be talking about less than these numbers. Building material, the code outlines the compliance options for what people select as building material, but the exterior needs to be non-combustible material. Fire retardant treated wood is still questionable, and that's something Dan and I will have to work through. Typically, those treatments don't last very long, so we probably need to get a little more specific in that as well. But again, we're looking for ignition-resistant building materials. And the code does have some details and evaluation of those building materials. And again, I didn't share the entire code in my presentation. You guys are presented with that, so hopefully you've had some time to look through that. So if you look at the class 1 requirements, if we did have low and we had people using those class 1 requirements, we are pretty much doing all those things anyway. Non-combustible gutters, screening vents, all those things that were in that class 1. We were pretty much doing. So we agree with Laramie County that's not much of a stretch to just say, we don't need a class 1 and class 2. Let's just do structure hardening as part of our code. So some of those details for that structure hardening, and again, this is lumped together. We're getting away from that class 1, class 2. Class A rating on the roof, roof assemblies, gutters have to be non-combustible. Screen vents, protectees with that 1 hour fire resistance, ready construction. And then again, approved non-combustible materials for exterior walls. Heavy timber or log construction is compliant with non-combustible. And those again are detailed in those sections 402.2, 402.4. Again, flashing, one of the other things that is flashing at the bottom of the siding where it contacts with the foundation. 6 inches of flashing to also help because that's a prime area for embers to find. And Dan, certainly if you have any interjections, please feel free to jump in if I'm misspeaking anything.
No, sir, I've been following along. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. So underfloor enclosures would be on decks that are constructed, again, we're trying to protect the flammable materials. So protecting it from the bottom is a great option. And again, Class A rated material for your decking, fire resistant treated wood. They got to prove it's going to stay fire resistant and last. So again, we're looking for those ignition resistant building materials. So any additions or any appendages, projections, they have to comply with this section. And again, using ignition resistant building materials. Windows are also a big deal. Make sure they have that fire rating of 20 minutes. That's also a known weak spot in a structure fire if the building's exposed to that radiant heat. So must be thermal pain, must be that 20-minute rating. Vehicle access doors, talking about garage doors, and again, making sure that gap is sealed up really well so embers can't protrude into the garage and find flammable material. And the detached accessory structure, we're talking about sheds. Well, this one actually is talking about a habitable. So if it was an ADU or a mother-in-law cabin, whatever you want to call it, if it's less than 50 feet from a habitable, or I'm sorry, this is not habitable. If it's less than 50 feet from a habitable or occupiable space, it would need to comply. And again, that would be if it required a building permit to build it. Did I get that right, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Site and area requirements, and this is really what we've been trying to promote, and Logan's doing a great job of talking to a lot of homeowners in our community, and we talk about the things on the outside, the plant life, the flammable materials, the stuff that people have around their houses. So this shouldn't be new to anybody. I hope it's not new to anybody. And again, I'll put a shameless plug in. If you haven't had your home evaluated yet, we'd love to come out and do that. Go to our website and get Logan out there to do a hazard zone ignition.
John, I just sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say that so much of what you're talking about sounds so familiar from that eval. And I noticed that when reading through the packet, that a lot of what you're presenting and what we're talking about in the adoption of this is what you've been doing as a district for a long time, right? So it's really, we're talking about some formalizing here, but so much of what was in this packet and what you're talking about are things that I was told as a homeowner, hey, you might want to make these changes for resiliency. So, which is great to see that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out. And again, this code is really talking about new constructions, and the advantage for us is we feel like we can educate a new homeowner, somebody's building their new home to move into our community. We can educate them right off the bat on what it's like to live up here and what we'd like to see, how we'd like to see, help your house survive, because we live in an area that is prone to wildfire. There was some questions. One of the things that was put in the code is mature trees of no less than 10-inch diameter at 4.5 feet above ground level may be maintained. And again, that's may be maintained. You still need to keep that 10 foot from any branches. So you'd have to trim it pretty wildly to really meet the intent of keeping it 10 feet away from your structure, the crown, if you will. So that's a rare exception. But again, if you look at that 10-foot log, that's basically saying the same thing as why they allow log structure. It's really too big to really start on fire quickly, but you have to remove all the small stuff within 10 feet of your structure. Does that make sense? It seems a little counterintuitive, and a lot of these decisions that people are making about what they do, what fuel reduction they do around their house is driven by their insurance as well. So that plays into all of this.
John, can I ask you a question about construction? One of the other questions that I have been in conversation about is construction cost. And when we look at these guidelines, and I look at the map, if someone on, downtown, even near Stanley Village, up behind Stanley Village, if someone does if they remodel 50%, they will have to bring their house up to the same compliance as the last house on the top of Little Valley as far as wildfire protection goes. All of these rules will apply whether you're in the town, some people say city, or if you're at the far outreach of where that interface is really critical, that protection Some houses we can't get to for 20 minutes with a
Yep.
fire truck. And I am totally on board with all of these guidelines. Where I have heartburn and the conversations have gone, like, I don't have a good defense, is in town limits, right off the highway. It will be the same standard with all of these guidelines because it's the same rating. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. We're looking to be consistent throughout the fire protection district. And I guess, the message that I really want to get through, it's not about flame contact in a fire. It's about ember wash, ember shower, ember storm. And that can happen anywhere in our community. It doesn't matter if you live right next to the highway on Highway 7.
As you know, I have seen it, I have lived it, and I agree with you. But in the role today, we are considering fiscal responsibility, reasonable standards that we're not asking people to have Logan do an evaluation. These guidelines will force homeowners to follow these rules. And that's where I think that we have to be very cautious as a town board entity to protect those interests. So 100% on your side with the danger of fire. I am not 100% on your side with regard to this even application in the circumstance that I just presented.
I guess I'm thinking about how I want to respond to that. Just a reminder, this is new construction. This is the same conversation we had about fire sprinklers in houses. With the model we use in our community to fight fires, to prevent fires with what we're using, any systems that we can install to reduce the likelihood of a fire, whether it be from inside the house, outside the house, wildland fire, whatever, helps us operate and keep firefighters safe, keeps residents safe. So I understand your concern about cost. I would encourage you to do a little research. We've been working with CPAW, and that's an acronym. I don't know if I can come up with, maybe Steve or Dan can remember it, but Headwaters Economics, the driving force behind that. And they help communities write these kind of codes and help them move forward with protection of the community. And they have some great information on costs. They have some great information on mitigation. And it's kind of been around the industry. What I'm hearing is every $1 spent on mitigation, which to me includes home hardening. That's in my book is still mitigation as well. Save $6 on the recovery side. So it's much cheaper to fix it up front than it is to rebuild it. So I see I got a couple hands up, so I'm not sure who went up first, but Trustee Youngland, do you want to ask a question?
Sure, thank you. So if you could clarify, so let's take Upper Stanley Village or Lower Stanley Village, or even a lot of buildings downtown where they're connecting, where they're pretty much the same building. If one business were to want to update their facade or what have you over the 25%,
okay,
how is that going to affect when it's a connecting building? Does everybody have to, or how does that work when it's like a connecting building?
I'm probably going to defer that one to Dan. If they have a common wall, it wouldn't extend to the next building, but Dan, do you want to take a shot at that?
Dan, you might be on mute.
Yeah, I can't see him on my list, so.
No, John, you're correct. We would not be able to put that enforcement on the neighboring property.
Okay, so even though it carries through it looks like one building from the street, they would be able to not impose that remodel or whatever on the existing neighbors then.
You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Trustee Brown.
Yeah, I got actually two questions. One is, if somebody's remodeling a building or building a building and they have to use this hardening material, how much more expensive is it than if they didn't use hardening material? I mean, it strikes me that there may not be a huge cost difference between the hardened material and what they might otherwise use. Is that accurate?
I would say that's accurate. There's a lot of this already going on in our community. A lot of the builders have already personally adopted this in certain areas of the community. I know a lot of the newer homes built up in the Windcliff area they're doing a pretty good job of hardening them from day one as they've been built. So it is a bit of a mind shift change. It does seem somewhat limiting, and I understand that for people and their choices. But again, the cost is not dramatic. And again, I would refer to that CPAW if you go to their website. And again, I didn't pull that up. I don't have it at the tip of my fingers, and my memory's not good enough to try to quote it. But there is some good information out there. And we've been working with CPAW on our development code rewrite. So,
and Bill, I know you have another question, but to riff off of that for a second, does, if someone does make those changes and does harden and does use the appropriate materials, I would think it puts them in a more favorable place with their insurance carrier.
Yeah.
And I'd agree with that. That's really the next big shoe that's going to drop is when insurance says, we're not going to insure you if you build it combustible in the wildland urban interface.
Yeah.
That shoe's already dropping.
Yeah.
My other question relates to projects that have already started. I'm thinking particularly of the stuff up at the Stanley with the addition of the hotel rooms and it's a little different since the state now owns that. I would think there'd be probably a tendency for them to use hardening materials anyway up there, but how does that apply for, I presume until we adopt this, it's not enforceable for things that really started before this, but yet if people are still building things with hardening, maybe that doesn't matter as much, and particularly with something like the Stanley project.
Yeah, and I can assure you, and Stacy can speak up if she wants to as well here too, but we're in constant communication with the Stanley, and we're letting them know this is coming. And like you said, it really depends on when the building permit is applied for. Is my recommendation is this wouldn't go into effect till July 1. So we have a little bit of time. But we're even making recommendations. There's going to be a courtyard at the Stanley when they add on to the hotel. And we're like, time out, no conifers, no pines in the courtyard. We don't want flammable landscaping in the middle of all of that building. So, and they're listening and they're doing a great job of working with us and making those changes where they can. Anything else, Trustee Brown? Are you good?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Trustee Youngland, you thought of another one?
Thank you. Yes. And this is towards the Insurance Commission. Has there been talk with them about, because people are getting dropped, and it's or the rates are so exorbitant, that some are just self-insuring, basically. Are they saying that, with these changes that are being proposed, are they more willing to not go so high on the rates or drop them, or what's the talk with the insurance commissioner?
I would definitely say it's a topic of conversation. I don't know that I can speak to that directly on what, but I think any mitigation that you do, whether it be wildfire or hail, hail, if the insurance commissioner, state insurance commissioner spoke at the town hall that we had a couple of weeks ago with Commissioner McNally, and I believe Mayor Hall was there as well. I know he was. I stood next to him in a picture. He talked about our rates in our area And a lot of our rates are driven by hail loss, not so much fire loss. But fire loss is also a big component, especially with where we live above that 6,000 foot. So to me, I would say the insurance industry is watching this development of this code, and, you know, pretty much the state is saying you will adopt it. And I think they're in support of that. I can't imagine to try to fight it and say, no, we're not going to adopt it. And that's my opinion. But that's what I'm hearing. Did that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I just think it's a good point, Trustee Eigel, to put out there to our constituents that, this might be a little bit more costly or what have you, but in the long run, it may help not lose your insurance or have the rates go so exorbitantly high. So I was just wondering. Thank you.
And Cindy, I really appreciate that perspective, but we are speculating. And John just said, well, I don't know for sure, but I think. And I think that we have to operate from a position of insurance professionals, and we have to look at data. And I think that it may have an impact. I mean, it could go either way, right? It's all what we think. But if the whole area is a single rating, insurance companies are probably not going to dig down into whether it's on 3rd Street or Black Squirrel Drive to determine if it's good or not, unless there are different zoning areas. And so looking at this map, it really is fascinating how it can be so different from one side of Fish Creek where it's extreme, and the other side of Fish Creek, it's none. And if we blanket the whole, I just think there's some impacts that we don't have data on to decide on, but we are speculating a little bit.
I agree that it's a lot of speculation. We don't know what insurance companies are going to do, and they're in it for making money, whatever you might say. And I'm sure there's humans and compassion in there, but they've got to stay profitable and be able to pay for those next fires that come through. If I look at the whole thing very as broadly as I possibly can and trying to extend my mind over the valley and the whole beauty and quality and don't overdevelop and don't do this and stop rezonings and all of the interesting things that we're doing to try to shape the future, I keep coming back in my core to the right thing to do is make the whole town the safest possible. And I know it's a time of great transition, not just in insurance, but in so many other ways. And we're going through this tremendous drought, which adds further impetus to it. I just can't help but get back to my core of the right thing to do is make it as safe as possible. And it's difficult. It'll be difficult for so many owners if they're doing development or building because it will cost more. But I can't get away from the feeling that this is the right thing to do at the core.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Trustee Brown, you had a question?
Yeah, I got to follow up. I remember before I was on the town board, we adopted something that would require sprinklers in new construction of residential.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
I know that, and that's not really part of this, as I understand it. It's we're going beyond what this would require. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say I mean, this is going to be a required code statewide. There is also an international wildland urban interface code. And a lot of how this code was written and the board that wrote it used that as the basis for writing this code. So it's really probably, and I haven't word for word compared them, but it's very similar.
Okay, but
the fire sprinklers in residential structures is in the residential code. And again, that had been amended out of that code for many, many years. So being able to add that back in again goes to our kind of, as the mayor put it, as making our community as safe as possible.
Yeah.
If you look at, I mean, not only do we need to prevent a wildland fire from burning the house from the outside, we need to prevent a house from starting a wildland fire. So anything we can do to help that happen, especially with the model we use for fire protection with a mostly volunteer response, we need all the time we can get. So having sprinklers allow us some more minutes to get there and make a difference and keep that fire within the structure is also critically important. That
Yeah.
answer your question?
Well, sort of, except that I had heard people say that the problem with the sprinklers is they go off without, being justified sometimes, and sometimes the damage from the sprinkler is more of a concern than the protection from fire. Now, they're two different things, obviously, and I think health and safety may take priority in that. I get that, but I'd heard that insurance companies in particular do not give any benefit if you have sprinklers in your house because there's as much risk of flooding the house as there is fire protection. So it was done before I was on the town board. I'm not trying to revisit or anything, but it does kind of bear on this whole cost issue that Trustee Heigl is raising a little bit. So I'm not sure how I feel about it. I just wanted to raise that. That's all.
And I understand your concern. And again, I would encourage you to reach out and do some research on your own from the experts in the industry for that issue. Anything else? We'll keep moving forward with the site and area requirements. Want to bring up this bottom one. And again, site signage is something we've always required anyway. Retaining walls and fencing needs to be non-combustible within 8 feet of the structure. And again, this is to stop that fire. And some of the science and some of the study that's been done of some of the larger urban conflagrations, such as Marshall Fire, I can name a whole bunch of them. They were finding out that the wood privacy fence was basically bringing the fire right to the house. As the privacy fence burns, when it gets to the house and finds more combustible material, that's a bad thing. So this code does include this. This will be something that we'll have to work through with Dan and for the town permits, because we're thinking that we're going to have to develop a fencing permit now just to make sure people comply with this one. Because right now a building could be built and they come in later and put in a fence and they haven't had to have a permit. So this will require a little bit more work to make sure it happens safely and to this code. So you get out further than that 5 to 30 feet. And again, this is everything, nothing different than what we're telling people. And again, we're trying to move things further apart so they don't start each other on fire, keep the ground fuels to a minimum. That 10-foot clearance between the crown of the trees, and I'm talking about the branches, 10 foot between those trees and that 5 to 30 feet. Then when you get out further, that 30 to 100 feet, you can be a little more relaxed. You might be able to get away with a grouping of trees, but you still want them to try to be 6 to 10 feet apart. We included the appendix in our draft. Laramie County did not. I decided to include the appendix that was provided from the state, mainly because we're adopting this as a standalone code. Laramie County adopted this as part of their code adoption process. They updated to the 2024 international codes. So they just included this into those codes, and that's how they chose to do it. Since we're doing it kind of standalone, I wanted to have the appendix on there in case there was any questions. Next time we update the code and go to the next cycle, we will probably do what Laramie County did, and it'll be a part of the code, if that makes sense, for part of the fire code. So the permits or the appendix really are just talking about the basics on how they communicate with us, the construction document needs that we need, as well as inspection and enforcement. Talk a little bit here, I guess, about roles and responsibilities. Feel like I'm missing a slide, but I'll talk through it. this is where we've talked about in that small core group about the building department taking the responsibility for things that are attached to the building. They're already doing plan reviews, they're already doing inspections as it's being built. So it seems kind of natural to just say, yep, they use the right siding. Yep, the fence is non-combustible within 8 feet of the house, all those issues. And everything on the exterior, the site and area, the fire district would take care of. And I know that sounds like we're taking on more capacity, but we've already been doing inspections on the fire sprinkler systems for residential structures. So again, for us, it was like, well, while we're there, we can educate, we'll inspect and enforce and make sure it's up to this code if it's new construction or major remodel. So that's kind of where we landed as far as that dividing line of who's going to take care of what. And that's where the cooperative agreement comes in, and we can be really clear in that on who's doing what, how the fees are structured, and all those things going forward. Any questions?
I just want to clarify. I would like to see that agreement and see how that splits up, because there will be a financial impact on the town for a fire district code. When do you anticipate that agreement will be available for review?
I have a draft of it, but it had not been sent to legal yet. So I think our next step would be for each of us to send it to our legal. I used it what Lamar County adopted as my draft,
Okay.
hoping that would make it pretty simple.
And can you elaborate on the difference between adopting the appendix and not adopting the appendix? What does that change?
This is all repetitive out of the fire code, and if we were doing it on the residential code side, it's all repetitive. It's already in there of these processes of getting permits. Code official has authority to inspect, all those details. So that's why I felt it was necessary to have the appendix. And as far as the state is concerned, they really don't care if you adopt the appendixes or not. I just thought it made sense because it's a standalone code at this point. So
I'm not hearing a strong justification to include it, or criteria that was used to either include. I'm assuming there are other implications that we're just not aware of. So I would like to be aware of those. If we're going to do something different than adjacent authorities, I think we need better information to make that decision.
Dan, do you have any opinion or comment on that?
Well, John, I think you were correct in adopting the appendices until we rewrite a new code. Trustee Idle, what is your main concern with if you could, of the appendices?
Oh, you bet. Yep. Great. That's a great question. Increased cost, taxpayer advocacy. Really, I believe in the safety. I have served with the fire district. Dan, I don't know you well. I have frontline experience and fear of fire. I think there's got to be a healthy fear, but in a trustee role, I think that we have to balance requirements on the community with the benefit that it will provide. So that's why I'm trying to drill down on why we adopted an appendix that the county didn't. What I see in this very brief summary, having not read the appendix, is that if it's repetitive or redundant, why would we add additional language unless there were other provisions? And that's what I'm looking for. What are those differences?
Okay. That's something that John and I can go through. That's a great question, and we can go in and see what is repetitive, but most of this is just lining out, permits, who's going to inspect it, enforcements, temporary permits. Like you said, it's a pretty broad overview, but we can certainly drill down on that and do a comparison for you. I have not done that.
Yeah, the expectation that I feel, the burden on my shoulders is to evaluate this and make the tough decisions for the community by thoroughly evaluating new rules, guidelines, expenses, costs, and balance that with the benefit. So that's what I want to try to do. And Plus, I'm not doing anything for a whole week, so I'll just read this and get through it. And I just want to do my due diligence in a responsible manner, Dan.
Sure. And I think we should do that as a team too. So
thank you very much.
And one other thing to add to that, and I have to look back, I sent a few links yesterday for more information, but I can make sure you have what Lamar County adopted as a whole. So if you want to read through that as well, it's even longer because it's the IRC, the IBC, the mechanical code, and you'll see they all fall under the same guidelines for these three appendixes: how you do a permit, how you do construction documents, and how you do inspection and enforcement.
Well, and that's where my question comes from. I could read the documents. I could read all of the documents and make my own comparison. What I was hoping to get to was what helped you make the decision to say, let's include this appendix based on these differences or these advantages or opportunities. So,
and again, yeah, it's just because we're adopting it as a standalone code.
Okay.
If I was adopting it as part of the fire code, that would be, the appendixes would be redundant and I would delete them.
If I may, real quick, these appendices, yes, are redundant in that they are also in the fire code, the IFC, the IBC, the IRC. All those international codes have these appendices in chapter 1, I believe. That is the process for the permitting. Since this code is not the fire code or the building code, we want these appendices in here so that it's clear that within this code, these are the permitting processes, just like in the IBC, just like in the IFC. So because we are not attaching this as part of the fire code or the building code, we want to have these in here just so that it's clear that these are the same processes that we use for the fire code, for the building code, for the IRC, all of those different codes. But because it's not attached to any one of those, we want to keep those appendices in here.
Okay, now that
that
makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, the county adopted it in tandem with the building code, so it's already in there.
Well, I appreciate you coming down to my level, Stacy, and explaining it. Thank you.
I got you.
If I may, Trustee Eigel, this is more about administrative and procedural requirements to Stacy's point. Because we have the administrative and procedural requirements in our adopted codes in chapter 1, like she said, in the front of most all of our codes, it talks about, permitting requirements, plan review, authority to inspect, stop work orders, maintenance, things like that. It picks up a lot of that language in the chapter 1 administrative section of the code books. And so when Larimer County adopted theirs, I'm just assuming here, sir, that, because they had that language and this was just another code that came with them, they did not have to do this. But in John's defense, to adopt these for the administrative and procedural requirements, just to make sure we have them, we get the proper construction documents. We have inspection and enforcement. That's how I see it.
Is it better to adopt this as part of a fire code, like the county has, or is this better by itself? And is that up to us, the town, or is that up to the fire district?
Well, when we got to talking about this, when it first came around, we first had to decide, do we want to adopt a whole new code? And we had just done that January 1st of 2024. Mm-hmm. So we didn't feel that it was prudent to there was a lot of conversation that happened when we adopted that code. So to go through that exercise again on top of this, we chose just to adopt this code by itself. And yes, I think it would be easier if it all came together in the future as an entire procedure and document as one. But this is how we decided to go forward with it.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, Steve or John, please chime in.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Dan. And thanks to my code professionals for jumping in on that and helping explain it. No, I think you're absolutely right. And part of it's the tight timeline. This has a deadline of April 1st of 2026 and enforceable by July 1st of 2026. So it wasn't really time to look at updating to the next fire code. And again, the fire district serves both the town of Estes Park and unincorporated Larimer County in our district. Larimer County went to the 2024 IRC, IBC, 2024 international codes, and the town's on the 2021. So we had a couple of years there where we were all on the same version, but here we go again with different versions. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
Well, you've just touched on something really important, though, and I think that's the difference of properties that are in the town and are out of the town or at the limits of the fire district. Are those still inspected by the town? How is that going to, if the town is doing the interior or the materials, as you just explained, how would that be different for an inspection at the far reach of the district?
We are going to have a cooperative agreement with Larimer County as well. And again, we felt like we're already inspecting fire sprinkler systems for Larimer County. So we will just include this on those trips out for new construction. So yes, we will also have to do this, have a cooperative agreement with Larimer County. Larimer County is offering to help with inspections. My gut tells me they're going to be so overwhelmed, it's not going to be very effective. And again, we'll talk about this with my board, but if we're already going there to inspect fire sprinklers, why wouldn't we just be talking to them about the mitigation and the site and area requirements?
And would that be different from in town, or I'm just trying to figure out the separation between the town staff and out of town? How are you going to handle that differently? Maybe that'll be in the cooperative agreement.
We're trying to handle it the same from our perspective with both entities, so we can stay consistent across the fire district.
Okay.
But anything outside the town limits, obviously, we're working with Larimer County Building Department.
John, I have a question.
Okay.
So in the appendix C, there's the whole section about unsafe conditions. And do those things apply to, the same people that are making changes to their properties? Or in reading it, it seems that it's much broader, that can apply to existing properties that are not making any changes.
And I didn't review that, and I'd have to review it to answer that specifically. I understand your concern. Again, this is not a retroactive code. We're not going to go out and inspect and look at people's property and make them remove fuel. Right. Our approach, and I think it's working really well right now, is education. We're telling people what we recommend, and a lot of people are taking those recommendations to heart. And that's the way we prefer to operate as a fire prevention division, is to educate, and hopefully that education leads to action.
Right.
I think we've been very successful. So again, we're not going to go around and look for an unsafe condition, and we don't have that authority to go in unless they are doing a major remodel or something that would fall within that code.
Right.
That answer your question, Director Robbins?
Yeah, it does. I think you actually, the state has given you that authority, and I realize why you're not, taking, the district's not taking that, taking that on. It would probably cause more problems than it would solve. But I actually know of situations where insurance companies have come in and done inspections on properties, deciding whether they want to renew the insurance on a property, and they're really concerned and, either raise the rates dramatically or decline to renew because of substantial unsafe conditions on a neighbor's property. So I'm not I just think that there should be some sort of balance there, and I didn't know, how what the intent of the whole unsafe condition clauses were. You explained it.
Yeah.
But
There is other legislation, and again, I don't have that number in my head of what that legislation was that would give like fire districts the authority to do exactly that, go inspect and
exactly, there is.
but we have not adopted that, and that's not our intent to adopt that at all. And when it
and I'm
comes
with you
to,
there. Like I said,
yeah,
I think that would cause more, problems than it would solve.
yeah, and again, we're really trying to use education. We've got a neighborhood ambassador program, and part of that education is getting neighbors talking to neighbors, hoping to avoid these situations where I had to do it and so didn't. It's like, well, let's do it as a neighborhood. And that's our goal, is to get the community talking and get the community taking action. Okay, Attorney Kramer.
Well, I have a follow-up on this topic, but I'll let our board members go first.
Okay. Trustee Eigel.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about regulation where education is good. I'm glad that you raised that. The question of education is a great opportunity, and the district does well with that. Is there a measure for implementation? What's the second part of that? If we talk to 1,000 people, is there a way to determine what that compliance is? How effective is that side of it?
That's a good question. And again, we've only been into this a little over a year. Our first educator was hired in late October of, what year is it, 24? And we're talking about ways to measure that. It was kind of jumping into a big unknown. And for me, people mitigating around their houses is very important. We're talking about ways that maybe we can start to evaluate that and start to talk to people and say, hey, can we come, let us know when you're done, or let us know and we'll come back. And we're working on that. What I would say is, just anecdotally from being in the community, we're seeing a lot of work happening, and that's great. Everybody's busy. Everybody's taking this to heart, and where they can, they're making a difference. And again, it's really hard to put a number on that. Obviously our goal would be everybody in the community has mitigated their property and reduced fuel load on their property. Is that realistic? No. But sorry, that didn't really answer your question, but okay, Trustee Youngland.
It absolutely did. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So let's say somebody's gonna redo their roof more than 25%. So then you come out for that inspection, and there's other things that zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 haven't been done. Is there, other than education piece, is that going to, because they're doing a roof, trigger other things that that owner would then be held responsible to do because of that roof project?
John, if I may.
Go ahead, Dan.
So no, okay, we're going to use your roof as the example. You pull a roofing permit, we come out and we make sure that we have, class A rating for the ember protection. It's installed for our wind loads and whatnot. That is the inspection that we came out to do. There is a bit of see something, say something, maybe if it's a truly a life safety issue or recommendation. But no, we are not out there to, think about it this way. I go in a lot of very old structures to do an inspection on a window. Okay. They're making the building better. I walk by 3 or 4 outdated per code instances just to get to that window. That is not my purpose there. Mine is to inspect the permit that you applied for the window. You are making the building better. It's more energy efficient. They may have the 20-minute rating for fire, whatever the reasoning for that window change. But for me to make a list as I'm in there, absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Hey,
So the same would go for this on that exterior.
Did you have a question, John?
I think where a lot of confusion comes in, and I think I understand it correctly, but with the 25%, everybody's worried that, you know, once they hit that 25% on their roof, then they're going to have to redo their whole house. And I think what that 25% is, if I'm understanding it correctly, is once you get to 25% of your roof, then you have to make the entire roof correction and not anywhere else. Just the 25% means just for what you're working on.
Correct. And I'll point out too that we already required a Class A roof right now before this code, so it's really no change.
But it's like siding. If you start your siding and you get 25% around the house, then you got to do the whole house.
Correct. Yep. Thanks. Attorney Kramer?
Yeah, thanks, John. So I hope I'm not beating a dead horse at this point, but I just wanted to point out it's not just the appendices. There's the fuels accumulation provision relating to structure ignition zone 2. So I think it might be important to address how the district and the town are looking at compliance or enforcement for that, slash piles, logs, branches, combustible mulch in places where maybe the slash pile is new, but the structure is not. It's existing construction and it's just a pile of logs. Could you speak to that?
And again, this is my gut is to go back to the education opportunity and look at it that way and try to help homeowners make good decisions about not just their building, but also their property. Again, I don't see us, I'm going to quote my dad. I know you get a lot further, you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. So I really feel like taking the educational approach rather than going in and say, hey, we see that you got a mess going on. You have to clean it up. We'll go in and say, you know, your property would be a lot safer if we can, you know, help you come up with a plan to deal with these things. So right now, all the assessments we do them for free. They're not code compliant. We don't go back and inspect to see if they did the work. We're educating, we're encouraging, we're getting communities, HOAs on board, talking to their neighbors. So that's our hope, that this is not we're going to go around and look for problems and try to enforce it. We've got enough to do, just trying to educate. That answer your question?
Thanks, John.
Sorta.
It did.
Anything else? If there's no more questions, that's really all my presentation. I did pull up a video. If anybody's curious what an ember shower looks like, we have some video from the multi-mission aircraft from the Kruger Mountain Fire.
Oh, great.
A couple minutes long. If you...
Sure, go for it.
Okay,
yes,
let
please.
me see. I might need to stop. I'm going to stop sharing and try this again. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the day of the fire start. So everything in white is the heat signature that the MMA is seeing. So you can tell where the heat of the fire is. And then as it jumps to its next view, you can kind of see it right in the middle of the screen there. You see the ember shower coming off that fire. Then they zoom in a little bit. This is really what we're combating with mitigation, with home hardening. We're combating that ember shower. That's really what's going to start houses on fire and extend the fire. So I just want to show that as a really great example from a fire that we had, again, that was near and dear to our community. And luckily it didn't become a giant raging fire. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your participation and your great questions. We'll be looking to try to adopt this at our February 23rd meeting, our fire district meeting. So certainly all invited to come and share in that conversation if you'd like.
Well, great. Thanks to everybody. Any of the last questions or comments? Don't see any hands raised. Hear no comments. So everybody have a great day, and let's keep moving towards safety. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, John. Thanks for all that work.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.